I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to be here for a number of reasons. I was excited to come here when I found out I was going to come back to Duke, and I was really excited when I walked around outside and looked at all the great work that you guys are doing. And I'm also excited to be here because the fundamentals of business, of aid, of development, of research are changing rapidly, and trends are developing that, if embraced and accelerated, could have profound positive effects on society and really help us to solve many of the problems facing our world. And from what I've seen, looking around at all the work that you're doing, I see that you are already on the cutting edge of a lot of these changes. And so my goal in speaking with you tonight is to kind of put these changes in a big picture perspective, what I like to call an orbital perspective. And what I want to do, we're somewhere under the clouds over there in this picture, and all these pictures, by the way, I think, I'll let you know if I'm wrong, if any of these pop up, but I think all the pictures that you're going to see are pictures that I tweeted from space, and if I'm not in the picture, then I took them. And so what I want to do, and what this kind of signifies, is I want to pan back. I want to pan back from the worm's eye view, past the bird's eye view, all the way back to the orbital perspective. And in doing so, I hope to illustrate the amazing possibilities that are afforded by taking this big picture view. And I know, since you're all involved in global health, you already have this big picture view. So tonight, I want to hopefully reinforce that. And if we look at technology, if we look back over the last 5 to 10 years, and we look at the technological advancements that have occurred during that time frame, and we project them forward to the next 5 to 10 years, the advancements are mind-boggling. As mind-boggling as they are, I think they're going to prove to be a vast underestimate. And I think that because we tend to think linearly, and for all of human history, this has worked well for us up until a few decades ago. And we can no longer project our technological advancements out linearly because the rate of acceleration of our technology is itself accelerating rapidly. And I think, and I believe, that we already live in a world where we have all the technology and all the resources necessary to solve many, if not all, the problems facing our planet. So if this is true, I know that's a pretty bold statement to make. If that statement is true, then why do we still face so many critical issues? And exploring that question is what I really want to focus on in our discussion tonight. And I want this to be a discussion. We're going to hopefully have as much time as possible to have a two-way dialogue about this. And so, in keeping with our perspective shift, I just want to share with you some of the amazing opportunities that I've had, these amazing experiences that I've been able to have, that have really shaped my perspective of the planet that we all share, and really given me an amazing perspective. In 2006, I lived for 18 days and 18 nights, 18 continuous days and nights on the bottom of the ocean in Aquarius, the world's only undersea laboratory. In 2008, I launched on Space Shuttle Discovery for a 2-week construction mission on board the International Space Station. And in 2011, I took this picture of Somalia and Ethiopia and Yemen as I spent a half year living and working on board the International Space Station. And I spent a half year working there after launching from Kazakhstan on a Russian rocket with a couple of Russian guys on the 50th anniversary of the first human spaceflight from the same launch pad that Yuri Garan launched from. And to me, launch into space with a couple of Russian guys on that historic day was an incredible example of international collaboration. And so I just briefly want to show you a quick video that describes the road to the launch pad that we went through. Our journey to the International Space Station began 2.5 years prior to our launch. My crewmates and I, Andrei Voroshenko, Sasha Samokotea, trained in Houston, in Russia, in Canada, in Japan, and in Europe. And the culmination of that 2.5 years of training was our final exams at Star City. But prior to leaving Star City, after all the exams were over, all the press conferences, all the ceremonies, we first stopped off at Red Square to lay flowers and show our respect to Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, and to Sergei Korolev, the great designer of the first rocket that took Yuri on that first orbit. In Baikonur, we did our final preparations for launch. We had the rollout of our rocket, and our mission was designated as the 50th anniversary mission, commemorating that first step that we took off our planet in exploration of the cosmos. And so on the 5th of April 2011, signed the door. We all signed our doors of our crew quarters. We got the blessing from the Russian Orthodox priest. Ordered the buses to make the long, dark journey through the desert out to the launch facility, again, to Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. After rechecking our suits and having some last words of congratulations, we marched out to the launch pad. At the launch pad, we had this living, breathing vehicle that we were getting ready to board. It was just absolutely spectacular to see this site. We boarded the elevator, rode it to the top of the launch pad, and each of us took turns climbing into our seats on the rocket.
T-10, first stage engines are at flight speed. Sit 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of the Soyuz rocket as Garan, Alexander Samokutyaev, and Andrei Borisenko began their journey to the International Space Station.
So it was interesting. As we lifted off, the Soyuz commander, Sasha Samokutyaev, said, obviously in Russian, in the words of Yuri Gagarin, "Poyechali," and "Poyechali" means we're off, and that's what Yuri Gagarin said when he launched. But unbeknownst to me, I didn't plan on doing this. It just happened spontaneously. My words of wisdom were "woohoo," and and I didn't realize that was going to go out live over the radio as well. And so if you were listening really carefully, you would have heard that. So what I really want to talk about is the orbital perspective. And just real quick, this is a picture I took of Space Shuttle Atlantis as it was coming aboard the space station for the last time. This was the last space shuttle mission. And right before it docked, we were getting ready to take some pictures to evaluate the heat shield on Atlantis when it flew over the Bahamas. And we had to grab this snap. So, you know, I want to share the orbital perspective with you, but rather than just tell you it in words, I want to show it to you. And about a month before I returned to Earth, I flew to the cupola, and this is a picture of me in the cupola of the International Space Station. It's this windowed observatory on the bottom of the station. It faces the Earth, and I flew there. Well, that's how we get around on the space station. We fly from place to place, but I was there because I wanted to take some photographs for a time-lapse video project, and I'm going to show you some of the imagery that we took. This picture right here, as I was taking the shots, really caught my eye. In this picture, you can see this long, illuminated line that's snaking across this large landmass for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And I really didn't know what this was. This really intrigued me. I initially wrote it off as like strange exposure of moonlight on a river. And it turns out that this is not a natural reflection at all. I've always been one of these astronauts that say you can't see any borders from space. Apparently I'm wrong, because what this actually is the man-made illuminated border between India and Pakistan. And seeing that from space had a huge impact on me. For the 50-plus years that humans have been flying in space, astronauts and cosmonauts have commented on how beautiful, how tranquil, how peaceful, how fragile the Earth looks from space. And these are not cliches that astronauts say because it feels good. It truly is moving to see our planet from space. And the point is not that we could look down and see a man-made illuminated border between India and Pakistan. The point is that we could look down at that same area and feel empathy for the struggles that all people face. We could look down from our orbital perspective and realize that each and every one of us is riding through the universe together on this spaceship that we call Earth, that we're all interconnected, that we're all in this together, that we're all family. And one thing to note about this is there are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're all crewmates. And as crewmates, we all have a responsibility to mind the ship and to take care of our fellow crewmates. I launched into space with a belief that we have all the resources. Like I said, we have all the technology necessary to solve all the problems that we face. Yet nearly 1 billion people don't have access to clean water. Countless go to bed hungry every night, and many die from completely curable and preventable diseases. And so, this is the world that we live in. It's a world where the possibilities are only limited by our imagination and our will to act. It is within our power to eliminate the suffering and the poverty that exists on our planet. So we have to ask ourselves, if this is true, why do so many critical problems still remain? And over the half year that I spent in space, any available free time that I had, I spent with my face plastered to one of the windows, looking at our beautiful Earth and asking myself that same question. And I believe that the reason why we still face so many critical issues, in spite of our ample technology, in spite of our ample resources, lies primarily in our inability to collaborate on a global scale. And what you're seeing in this video is the global scale. It is a scale where man-made and natural boundaries shrink. It's a scale where individuals and organizations and governments set aside their differences and work together towards our common goals. We now have the technology to enable true global collaboration that is consistent and world-changing. The key challenge is demonstrating just how vital and valuable collaboration truly is. The good news is there are literally millions of organizations around the world that are working to improve life on Earth. The bad news is, for the most part, these organizations are not engaged in a unified, coordinated effort. There's a great deal of duplication of effort, loss of efficiency, and unfortunately, in many cases, a loss of the good that these organizations would be able to do otherwise, and in some cases, unhealthy competition. There has to be a way for us all to work together towards our common goals. And I'm going to highlight some of these videos. We're going to see a little bit more time-lapse here throughout the presentation. But what I want you to realize is that this is not CGI. This is real. This is time-lapse photography. There's some auroras, and this is actually what our planet looks like from space. And so we're going to see some more of this. So I'll fast forward. So how do we go about this? Don't worry, we'll see some more. So how do we go about this? The key is we. And like I said, the key challenge is demonstrating just how vital, how valuable collaboration truly is, despite the real and perceived risks. But by truly demonstrating the value of true open collaboration, we will show that it's in everybody's best interest. And I think besides its implications for things like research, which are tremendous, and other, many, many other benefits, I believe that true open collaboration will be an engine that will fuel tremendous economic growth. And those organizations and individuals and governments that are engaged in secretive dealing, are engaged in corruption, those organizations that take an exclusively proprietary mindset will see themselves being left behind. And they will have to adapt, evolve, and take on a much more cooperative and collaborative mindset in order to keep up with the economic growth that true open collaboration will bring. And here at Duke, this is a perfect example of the power of collaboration. You have an organization like the Global Health Institute that is multidisciplinary, that is interfaculty, and you can see the power that creates. And I think that's a perfect example of how this will fuel economic development, will help us solve a lot of the problems that we face, like global health issues. And that's because open, transparent collaboration leads to better solutions. Through the pooling of resources and information, working together multiplies cost effectiveness, it reduces duplication of effort. It's the only real way to have economies and solutions of scale. And probably most importantly, true open collaboration leads to better accountability, which fosters trust. And we're all in this together, and the only way that we're going to be able to solve the problems we all face is by working together. And I think it's fairly obvious, and it's easy to cite our lack of global collaboration as an impediment to a better society. I don't mean to give the impression that I'm saying that collaboration is easy. It's not. Collaboration usually comes at building new capabilities in-house. Partnerships can incur high transaction costs. Maintaining relationships takes work. But there's also a lot of misunderstanding of what collaboration is. I mean, collaboration has become a buzzword. And what collaboration doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that every individual in a group has to have an equal vote. It doesn't mean that every solution needs to include all inputs. True collaboration means that different organizations and different individuals, different groups of the team bring different unique pieces of the puzzle, and they all add value to the group. Collaboration in that sense leads to solutions that are significantly better than any one member of the group could have done on their own. To take an orbital perspective of collaboration means that instead of viewing society as an arena for self-interested competition, we view it as a living organism, an organic whole. And collaboration in this sense is characterized by diverse organizations all working together systematically towards goals that benefit the entire social and environmental body. So working together, and this is, by the way, this is a picture of us on the actual 50th anniversary of the first human space flight, and this represents the crew. This was our crew at the time, and it represents 3 nations. And again, this is another example of international collaboration. But working together, we need to create incentives to share data and resources using the philosophy that a rising tide lifts all boats. NGOs, corporations, government entities, universities, citizen groups need to all see each other as community, a community all working together towards the same goals. And since the key is we, I challenge everybody here tonight to look for barriers to collaboration, to look for ways to overcome barriers of collaboration. And I think it's really important to realize that the barriers to collaboration are no longer technical, they're cultural. And we need to look for ways to break down cultural barriers to collaboration and build platforms for collaboration. And one such example, and you heard about it in the introduction, is the Keynote project. And in the Keynote project, we are trying to build an international coalition to basically say that the norm is data sharing, that sharing our data, that sharing our information is the norm. And we're trying to build an open source universal platform to do that. And so we realized that the first step to building a truly universal open source platform for collaboration is to collaborate with all those organizations that are trying to build a truly universal open source platform for collaboration. So that's what we're doing. But part of this effort is to be a catalyst for a global conversation about the need for working together to solve the problems that we all face. And I encourage everybody, we have a collaboration community on Google+. Please send us your comments, your discussion points, your concerns. You can do that at uninode.org as well. And so another effort to inspire and to align efforts is an effort called Fragile Oasis. And Fragile Oasis uses the perspective of astronauts on board the International Space Station and of crewmates on Spaceship Earth to share their orbital perspective to inspire people to go out and make a difference and make the world a better place. But we didn't want to just say, hey, we've got this beautiful planet, let's all go make it better. So we wanted to provide tools that organizations can use to work together towards our common goals. And every year we give out awards. These are medals that flew with me for 65 million miles on my last mission that I carried with me. And we give them for education, for humanitarian service, for peace, and we're going to add this year environmental stewardship. And so I encourage everybody to submit the projects that you're all working on, those projects that I saw out in the hallway. But we also are adding to the site an impact section. And so it's really important for organizations to be able to track impact. And so you can submit your project, and once we get this up and running, you'll be able to designate your impact dashboard. So what we've done is we've mapped all the systems of a spacecraft that provide life, systems for clean water, clean air, energy, food, health, etc., and we've mapped them to the same systems on Spaceship Earth. And so as you enter your projects and you get you build your dashboard, your impact dashboard, you are able to select your affiliated organization or your parent organization, and you can select Duke, or you can select Duke Global Health Institute, and then your data and all the other projects that select that as a parent organization's data will be aggregated to the Duke impact dashboard. And that will then be aggregated to the overall dashboard for whatever category that fits into. So I encourage everybody to join the community of Fragile Oasis, to submit the projects that you're working on, and to be able to track that impact. So I'll just let this play out to the end, so you can see this cool logo. Okay, I just want to say a couple words about open data. And I love this picture because although you can't see my feet in this picture, I always imagine that I've got 1 foot in daytime and 1 foot at night. But why I want to talk about open data and big data in the wide open spaces here is because we as a global society are producing data at an exponential rate. Technology has led to a world where the amount of data produced is exploding, doubling about every 2 years. And data provides fuel for finding the most effective ways to address our most critical challenges. Developing countries and communities that know where the most vulnerable people live, understand what needs they face, and can determine how best to use available resources are in a much better position to address their own development challenges. However, data by itself is insufficient. We also need the approaches and the tools to analyze that data and to translate that analysis into a more effective and targeted program that dramatically increases and improves everything from business marketing to the efficacy of a global health program. And in addition to our dramatic increases in our ability to produce data, there has also been recent developments in the ability and the power of tools to be able to analyze that data and to share that data and its insights globally. Open data and the ability to process and make sense of large stores of data is another significant aspect, another significant piece of the puzzle that's really changing our global society. And one example of a way to use open data and to use crowdsourcing to process large stores of data is a hackathon. And if you guys, I'm sure you probably all know what a hackathon is, but for those of you that don't, it's basically a mass collaboration. It takes on various themes. We've had random hacks of kindness, the National Civic Day of Hacking, and the one that I've been most involved with is the International Space Apps Challenge. And NASA has literally terabytes and terabytes of data, and we wanted to make that available to the public, to universities, to citizen scientists all around the world. But there's a big difference between providing data and providing data in a user-friendly way that the public can use for good. And that's where the International Space Apps Challenge came in. This last event, which was held last April, was the largest hackathon ever attempted. Over the course of a weekend, nearly 10,000 people came together in 86 cities and 44 countries on all 7 continents to build amazing data visualizations, open hardware solutions, and incredible education outreach tools. And this event was a huge success and really illustrates the power of taking a big picture perspective. And there's a couple of points I want to make about this big picture perspective. The first is that we don't have to be in orbit to realize that we are all in this together and that we need each other. We don't have to be in space to realize that we can't do it on our own, and we're not going to be able to find the solutions to the challenges that we all face if we don't work together. And we don't have to be in space to realize that by being open to innovative new partnerships and solutions, the solutions to these problems can come from radically different places that we hadn't thought of. And we're going to have to be open to innovation because the landscape of our global society is really changing very, very fast. And not only do we have to be open to innovation, we also need to know how to manage risk, because in order to make great strides towards our greatest challenge, some risk must be incurred. And I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about risk management and risk mitigation. And I'm going to share a story with you that I really haven't shared very often, but I think it's appropriate in some of the projects that you guys are working in. And in developing global health programs, I think part of the strategy development should be assessing risk. And I want to share with you this story that basically has shaped every decision I've made about risk for the last 25 plus years. And this is a picture of me in my first operational F-16 squadron in Germany. And I was a typical young fighter pilot. I was cocky, and I tended to think of myself as indestructible. But a couple months after this picture was taken, I was taken off in an F-16 from Shaw Air Force Base, South Carolina. And up until this point, I had literally thousands of takeoffs and landings, and nothing had ever happened until that day. On that day, I was rolling down the runway. I was part of a formation. And as I got a couple feet in the air, I lifted the gear handle to retract the landing gear, and I felt a pop and then a loud explosion. And it knocked my feet off the rudder pedals, my head back into the seat. And as a single seat, single engine pilot, we're very trained to be acutely aware of our engine parameters. And the engine appeared to be operating normally, so my plan at that point was to make a climbing turn so that if I were to lose my engine, I'd be in a position where I could dead stick it back down for a landing. But as soon as I started the turn, I realized that wasn't going to be an option on this day. I realized that the aircraft no longer had any usable thrust, and my only course, that the aircraft was going to crash, it was going to hit the ground, and my only course of action at that point was to survive, was going to be to eject. And so my focus shifted from trying to save the jet and myself to trying to minimize the aftermath of a jet that was about to hit. And we've got something on fighter aircraft called the emergency storage jettison button. And when you push that button, everything that the aircraft is carrying gets jettisoned off the aircraft. And on that day, I had about 5,000 pounds of, you could see those fuel tanks there. I had, training ordnance, and so there was a lot of weight. And so I initially thought, hey, let me try and buy some time here by cleaning off the aircraft, but out in front of me was rush hour traffic on the main road off the end of the runway, so I figured that wasn't an option. And I was pointed right towards a trailer park. And off to the left, I saw just kind of sparsely populated area, mostly woods. So I turned the aircraft over to the left, and then I saw further to the left just wide open woods. And I tried to turn the aircraft and point it right to the woods, and when I did that, the aircraft went out of control. It actually sliced back to the right. And I realized at that moment that there was no reason for me to be there anymore. That you know, it took, I don't know how long it's taken me to tell this story, but this whole story up until the point where I ejected was 10 to 20 seconds at the most. And the realization, though, that I needed to get out of the aircraft and that I was no longer needed, probably saved my life, because I ejected about 4 seconds prior to impact of the aircraft and less than a second before I would have been out of the ejection envelope. And so, you know, obviously I survived that incident, and I actually had no injuries whatsoever. And you would think that that kind of event would have an effect on you. It would change your outlook on flying, on life, on how you manage risk. And for some reason, and I don't know why, it really did not have any effect on me. No appreciable effect. What happened the next day was, I think, the life-changing wake-up call that I probably just hit the snooze button on. And the next day, in the spirit of getting back on the horse, I was leading a formation of 4 F-16s again. And as I got airborne and I retracted the landing gear and I'm climbing out and I pulled the throttle out of afterburner, I felt a pop. And I remember distinctly thinking to myself, you know what, I bet it's always done that and you just never noticed it before, because now I'm hypersensitive about, you know, everything that's going on. To make a long story short, I ended up, on this particular case, I was higher, I was on a different runway, there was nothing below me, and I did hit the emergency stores jettison button. And unbeknownst to me, I had another malfunction where all the stuff on one wing came off and nothing on the other wing came off. And so it left me in an uncertified asymmetric condition on the aircraft. However, to make a long story short, I ended up turning the aircraft around, landing opposite direction just as the last guy in the formation was getting airborne. And like I said, that was the wake-up call, because after thousands and thousands of, well, not thousands, but you know, at least 1,000 takeoffs with nothing ever happening, I had 2 in as many days that nearly killed me. And I think that really got my attention. And I wouldn't say I was a daredevil. I wouldn't say I was a daredevil before that, but after that second incident, I changed. I think my eyes were opened. I saw risk in a new light. I saw risk as the price to pay for a benefit. And I saw an emerging risk-benefit trade-off. And I think that this new outlook probably saved my life and carried me through a lot of really, really dangerous periods of my life. Everything from flying in combat in the first Gulf War to being an instructor at the Air Force's Top Gun School, where over the 3.5 years I was there, I went to 5 memorial services for colleagues and friends, to being an Air Force test pilot, to 2 space missions and 4 spacewalks. And in each of these situations, in each of these environments, before I would enter into a risky situation, I would first ask myself, where's the exit? If everything goes south, how am I going to get out of that? But before I ever got to the point where I needed, you know, an exit strategy, I would first ask, is going into this situation worth taking the risk in the first place? Is the benefit that's going to come from this worth the risk? At times, the answer to that was the benefit is so great and the cost of inaction so high that I sometimes went into situations where there wasn't an exit point if everything went south, just because of that benefit. And there were certainly cases like that in combat where not taking action would have put troops on the ground in a lot of harm's way. And certainly during space missions, there were times where the only thing we had to go on was the belief that what we were doing was critically important to what we were trying to do. So, I think, let's see. Oh, sorry, I just went to my punchline. Forget you saw that. You know, I think for an individual or an organization or a university to progress and to grow and to succeed, some risks must be taken. The safest possible space program is a space program that never launches anything, right? But what good is that? And what NASA does really well is it looks at any situation it can get into. It looks at every possible way things can fail, every possible emergency, every possible thing that can go wrong, and then it spends a great deal of effort and time to carefully think through those situations and to develop a plan of action that can be implemented very quickly in case that happens. What NASA doesn't do well is to know when to apply that rigorous risk mitigation strategy and when not to. And so we have a tendency to apply this strategy across the board. And what that leads to is a lack of flexibility and nimbleness, lost opportunities when we can't react fast enough to emerging opportunities. So we have to establish mechanisms, we have to have them in place to capture great ideas and emerging lower risk opportunities. And then in those cases have a streamlined path to action. So let's say somebody here at Duke has a great idea how to do a program for global health or sustainability or to create some kind of great social impact. It first must be noted that ideas are highly overrated. And what I mean by that is that although every great accomplishment starts with a great idea, ideas without action are empty. And so after carefully calculating the risk-benefit trade-off, looking at that equation, in order to reap the desired benefits of a decision or a particular course of action, a decision needs to be made not only to commit to action, but also at times there has to be a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones. Any worthwhile endeavor requires hard work and determination for sure, but sometimes it requires stepping outside of the way we've always done things, to look at things from different angles and to realize that any one of us or any one organization will not have all the pieces of the puzzle. So just do it, because it's precisely those people and organizations that truly commit to making a positive change and step outside their comfort zones. And it's precisely at those moments where they have the courage to embrace new and innovative approaches, new and innovative partnerships, and collaborate across different disciplines, industries, cultures, boundaries, borders, and as of late, I'm adding aisles to that as well. Those are the people that affect real change in the world, disruptive change. So one of my goals in this talk is for you all to take this as a call to action. Dialogue is great, but we need action, positive, disruptive action, action that leads to exponential good, to exponential progress towards the solutions to the challenges that we face. We need to stop thinking linearly and embrace exponential change, change that comes from being open to innovative partnerships and solutions, real change. And I think this is important, and the first step to being able to affect real change is to believe that real change is possible. And I want to share with you some of the things that I personally believe are possible. And again, there I was up on the space station, and we didn't have a lot of spare time, but in that spare time, pondering, what the world would look like in the next 50 years. And I believe that it's possible to live in a world without poverty, completely. I believe it's possible to live in a world where everybody has access to clean water and nobody goes to bed hungry every night. I believe it's possible to live in a world where nobody dies from preventable and curable diseases, and a world that educates all its children. And I believe that we do live in a world where the possibilities are limitless, and they're only limited by our own imagination and our will to act. So the last thing I want to leave you with is that nothing is impossible. I think you kind of got that out of what I was just saying. And every great accomplishment at first not only seems impossible, it seems a little bit crazy. And we tend to believe that things that have never been done before are impossible. And I'm going to have a lot of things to say about this in this video that I'm about to show you. But we've been working for decades to solve the challenge, a lot of the challenges that we face. We've been researching cures for cancer, for instance, for decades, as an example. And we've made great strides towards solving these problems, but we still have a mountain to climb. And I believe that the reason why we still have a mountain to climb is over those decades of hard work and all those decades of research, we did not effectively collaborate and cooperate together. But we had an excuse then that no longer exists. Up until very recently, we didn't have the technology to enable true global collaboration. We didn't have the technology to enable collaboration between governments and universities and industries and citizen scientists. We do now, so we no longer have an excuse. So I want to share with you a video that, to me, I took as a call to action, that described a call to action, I should say. It's a video that we made in collaboration with Peter Gabriel, and it talks about our return to Earth. But to set up the video, I need to tell you the story about coming home. And so my two Russian crewmates and I, when it was time to go home, we crammed into our Soyuz spacecraft, we closed the hatch, we undocked, we took a couple of orbits around the Earth, we passed the south tip of South America, and we kind of fishtailed to point our engines in the direction we're going, to point our engines backwards. And I remember as we did this, I saw a crescent moon just about to set going by my window. I had a window right here. And so we fired our engine, we slowed down enough to enter the atmosphere. We had this fiery ride through the atmosphere. You heard it described as going over Niagara Falls in a barrel that's on fire. It's exactly what it was like. It was a very, very violent ride. The parachute opens. We got thrown all over the place. We smashed into the ground. We bounced. We flipped. We rolled. We smashed into onto our side. And I was on the bottom of this, and my window was right here. And I remember distinctly thinking this and looking out the window. And when I looked out the window, I saw a rock, a few blades of grass, and a flower. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm home. And what's interesting about that, and I get choked up every time I say it, is we're in Kazakhstan. And so at that moment, my home went from living in Houston, Texas, to Earth. And so with that, I want to just say that we're all neighbors, we're all in this together, and this is coming back to Earth.
After 5 months in space, it was time to say goodbye to our friends and to our home on the International Space Station. We were very eager to return to Earth, but we wanted to savor our last moments in space as we did a couple of laps around our beautiful planet. As we boarded our capsule to come home, I left space with a call to action to spread the orbit perspective and a commitment not to accept the status quo on our planet.
So you can see the solar rays of the station tracking the sun, even though the sun's on the other side of the Earth. This green line is not the atmosphere. This black line right there, that's the thickness of the atmosphere. That's pretty scary, isn't it? It should be scary. This is one of our 16 sunrises we see every day. Here's the U.S. Here's the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River. There's the Great Lakes up here. There's the Nile River, the Red Sea, the Sinai. There's Israel. There's Baghdad. There's the Southern Lights.
Realize that for thousands of years of human history, the vast majority of the people in the world believed that it was impossible to fly over the moon, simply because it had never been done before. Human ingenuity and the determination of the human spirit proved that it was possible. Today, many people believe that it's impossible to solve the problems of the world or change the poverty that so many face. They believe that humans are not capable to come together, putting aside their differences, to address and solve the problems that face us.
One of the three hurricanes we saw while we were up there. So we're traveling from south to north. You're going to see this is the south part of New Zealand. That's the moon. You'll see the moon, moonlight on the ocean.
If we can land on the moon and return to Earth safely, if nations can join together and build an enormous research facility in orbit, we can work together to solve many of the challenges facing our planet, including the alleviation of poverty. Nothing is impossible.
So thunderstorms off the coast of Mexico City. or near Mexico City. This is the Japanese laboratory here, the US laboratory here. We brought up the Japanese laboratory on the space shuttle mission that I was on. So here's Seattle. You'll see thunderstorms in the central US. There's Houston, there's Atlanta, Jacksonville, Miami, that's Cuba, Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Just went over the Bahamas, and this is the north coast of South America. You see a moonrise over here. And this is our return to Earth after 6 months in space. I like to point out that was in slow motion. So I want to leave you with a question, but before I do, I want to thank you for the commitment that you're making to global health. I want to thank you for what you're doing to help make life on our planet as beautiful as our planet is visibly beautiful from space. And so I want to leave you with this question, but I want to leave it in the form of a music video. And as you watch this music video and you see the paradise that we all share, I want you to take this as another confirmation that what you're doing and the work that you're doing is critically important for our shared future.
Got a package full of wishes, a time machine, a magic wand, a glow made out of gold. No instructions or commandments, laws of gravity or indecisions to uphold. Printed on the box I see, Acme's built a world to be. Take a chance, grab a piece, give me to believe it. What kind of world do you want? Think anything. Let's start at the start.
So I just want to end by saying you don't have to be in orbit to have the orbital perspective, and by working together, we don't have to accept the status quo on our planet. So thank you for all that you're doing. Yeah, if you have time. Thank you. Yeah.
Or comments, whatever's on your mind.
So, does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thanks. All right. Yes, sir.
So I'm wondering what you feel about when you focus on one or two problems, what the trade-off is for other problems.
Yeah, so you can't do everything, right? So what the question was, what do you feel about the trade-off by picking one problem versus other problems? And I think it comes down to just trying to find the right balance. There's lots of balances. The risk balance, okay, what's the risk that you're taking versus the benefit that you're taking? But also part of that risk is what else are you not doing because of the time that you're allotted to this. So I don't have a good answer for that other than for each individual person or each individual organization, you have to find that sweet spot of what you think the greatest impact will be. And for me, personally, that's what it's all about. It's when I look at different paths I can go down at this stage of my life, it's all about impact. And where can I make the greatest impact? Where can I make the best use of the resources I have, of the experience I've had, of whatever knowledge I've gained, and to use that in the most appropriate way to get the biggest impact. So now I could go off and do things that I don't have a lot of experience in. I could do things that maybe would be fulfilling for me personally or fun, but for me, that part of the equation that's the biggest part of the equation. The biggest variable is the impact. If that makes sense. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciated from your talk or your perspective was the sense of being a steward and sort of the sense of stewardship. And I think one of the things that struck me is sort of how you, obviously they're related, but how you balance sort of being a steward of the Earth as a planet and an organism and steward of sort of people and humans. And I guess I just would be interested in your sort of from that orbital perspective. One of the things you didn't see from sort of up above was people, right? Mm-hmm. And so you didn't see the humans, and that only comes from your own personal and human experience.
Yeah.
And I would be interested to hear you talk about sort of your sense of the Earth as an entity and the environment.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually necessarily a choice. I think that they're not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. And so I think, for instance, one of the things that I also believe is I believe that it's possible that the net results of business activities could have a positive impact on the environment, that you can have businesses that create the goods and services that we want them to produce and do that in a way that not only is neutral to the environment, but it's beneficial to the environment. And that sobering contradiction that I talked about looking down at the Earth, that was about the people. So most of the things that I'm involved in has to do with social good and trying to improve the lives of the inhabitants of our planet. I'm not doing that exclusively of environmental things. I think that what we do is we infuse that in everything that we do. So whatever is your calling, whatever it is that you feel that you direction you want to go in, let's say it's environmental and you have environmental issues, you don't want to do environmental issues that hurt people, and you don't want to solve social problems that hurt the environment. So there's a way to do both, and I think it's with technology. Technology is not the answer to everything, but it is really becoming a tool for us to do some amazing things where we don't have to make those type of choices. That we can do both, and we're seeing it more and more every day. So, yes, sir.
So I think this is a really relevant topic right now with the government shutdown just recently passed, lack of collaboration. But when thinking of two parties like the United States and Russia that typically have not collaborated well, Eric Snowden just driving a wedge to further separate the two. What do you think specifically about this work fosters that collaborative environment where those two countries do collaborate where in so many other realms they don't?
Yeah, and if you think about it, even at the height of the Cold War, you know, when the Soviet Union at the time and the United States were bitter enemies, somehow, even during that time period, we found a way to collaborate in space in the Apollo-Soyuz program. So in that particular case, and in many cases like that, the factor is a common goal. There's something that, in spite of all the differences that two countries have, or two organizations have, or two people have, they found some common ground that they can agree on, and it was really cool, it was really compelling, and so let's set aside our differences and work together towards this common goal. There's also examples where things can be completely at odds with each other and still find ways to collaborate. I mean, a good example of that is the airline industry, right? So if the goal of an airline is to create the greatest share of the market, then cooperating and making it easy for another airline to bring passengers is counterproductive. But they take the philosophy in that case that a rising tide lifts all boats, and they realize that, okay, maybe it's better to make the market bigger than to, at our own detriment, try and get a bigger market share. And so I think a lot of times the answer to what we see as a lack of collaboration is our inability to look at the long term. We're overly focused on the short term, and we're overly focused on the small picture versus a big picture. And so if you step back and you take the orbital perspective or a big picture perspective, you realize that some of the things that you're selfishly doing are actually hurting you in the long run. And that if you were to cooperate in the long, initially maybe it might, be not that obvious that you're having a benefit, but in the long run it's going to be very obvious. And so, I mean, there's example after example of those type of things. And so I think that, the key issue is finding a common ground. Where there isn't a common ground, to be able to look at the big picture and to take a long-term perspective versus a short-term perspective. And we could spend, a few hours probably talking about that, but I think those are some of the issues. And some of the problems I think we see in Washington right now are because we got blinders on and we see just what we want to see in our little circle. We're not looking at the big picture. We're not taking into account the fact that everything is interconnected. And if you try and solve this, even if you're trying to do something good, if you're trying to provide clean water, for instance, but you're doing it in such a way that is hurting something else, it doesn't make any sense in the big picture. So everything has to be looked at from the big picture. So. Yes, sir.
What would you do if you were a college student?
What would I do? That is an excellent question. What would I do as if I was a college student? I think I would take my studies a lot more seriously. I think I would drink less beer. If I had to do it over again, is that what you're saying?
No, just if you were in college.
If I was in college, I would look for a way, and I actually kind of did this. I looked for a way to follow my dreams and to figure out a way that, to find out whatever it is that I'm the most passionate about, that I love the most, and then pursue that and then try and figure out a way to have that pay the bills later. So pursue what I really like to do and what really makes me happy, I think, which is kind of what I did. But so, okay.
Any other questions? If not, let me come up. Just let me give you a little gift from all of us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.